use is found in Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Act and functions to limit the exclusive rights of the copyright owner. Federal law states fair use requires no permission from the copyright owner to use the work and is not an infringement of copyright, and provides a number of illustrative examples of potential fair use, including criticism.
Welcome to Noshü is Live. My name is Noshü. It's Sunday. It's Sunday. You know what that means? It's time to share the love. Share the love. Share the love. Oh, the old gods and the new are so good to me. Oh my gosh. Thank you for being here. If you like this kind of nonsense, which I couldn't imagine that you would, please like, subscribe, share, notification, a bell of some sort. It's Sunday. That means it's time to share some love. Now, this one might be a little controversial. I don't mean it to be controversial. And it's about someone who's not American and represents a different country, so I may not even have the right to discuss them, but I'm going to discuss them anyway. All right. This is about Theresa May, Prime Minister of the UK. It's already... how many people have gone already? How many people have left? All right. Y'all can leave. I'm going to express myself anyway. Theresa May, who's the Prime Minister of Great Britain, all right? All right, hold on. Is it the UK or Great Britain or England? I don't know. She's the Prime Minister of that spot, all right? Now, my boy, John Oliver from Last Week Tonight on HBO has already made some very fine arguments why one could dislike Theresa May. All right? Her views, conservative views, her whole thing about the Brexit. Okay, I get it. I understand that. And I want to equate that to the United States. We have an ongoing argument in my country right now. Has to do with our president. There's a big population against him, and there's a big population that supports him. And my country is fighting that out. Fighting it out, like tooth and nail, fighting it out. Just like I in my imagination, what's going on over in the UK with Theresa May and Brexit. People fighting it. People are so strong on one side and equally strong on the other side are supporters. So I get that, you know, and that's how that country and my country are similar. However, this is where our countries divide, and I'm on the side of the UK. And I'll tell you why. It is okay for the citizens of the United States to fight each other on the direction of our country. That's the way it should be. We're like a family. The United States is a family. None of us get along. That's how we know we're a family. And if we want to debate the direction of our country amongst ourselves, that's what we should do. However, if someone on the outside of the United States starts insinuating themselves into our process of us deciding how we want to run our country, that's a different matter, right? If I can't fight with my brother, if I'm going to fight with my brother and then some dude on the outside gets involved, my brother and I are going to stand up and kick his ass. But that's not happening in my country. We're fighting amongst ourselves, and then they're based on all of the, I'm not going to argue with y'all, based on the best intelligence out there from my country, Russia has interfered with our election. They're continuing to interfere with our election. This is a war against my country by an outside country. The leader of my country is not standing up to that leader. That's where the breakdown in my country is happening. We can't fight amongst ourselves and then we're fighting against an outside person, and my brother's not fighting with me against that outside person. My brother is fighting with that outside person against me. What? So I will leave my country. That's where my country stands right now. Over in Great Britain or the UK or England, why don't y'all just settle on a name? What are y'all? England? That flag, is that? Anyway, over in the UK, I'm calling it the UK. If I'm wrong, y'all do whatever y'all want to do to me. Over in the UK, some bastard Russians, yeah, they're bastard Russians, because only bastards would do that kind of thing. And I don't mean, fuck that. Some asshole Russians poisoned some intelligence agent and his daughter with some hardcore Russia-only toxic nerve gas kind of shit. In England, on English soil. Did the Prime Minister of the UK say, I take Russia's side with that because we accept some asshole country intervening in coming into our sovereign land and doing shit. Unlike my country, you're invited, Russia, come in, fuck with the ballot boxes, fuck with Facebook ads, fuck with whatever you want, our power grids, fuck with whatever you want, because our leader doesn't give a shit. However, on this one point, Theresa May said, fuck you, Russia. If you don't have 10 minutes to watch this, fuck you. Honestly.
Order. Statement. The Prime Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a statement on the response of the Russian government to the incident in Salisbury. First, on behalf of the whole House, let me pay tribute once again to the bravery and professionalism of all the emergency services, doctors, nurses and investigation teams who have led the response to this appalling incident. And also to the fortitude of the people of Salisbury. And let me reassure them that, as Public Health England have made clear, the ongoing risk to public health is low, and the government will continue to do everything possible to support this historic city to recover fully. Mr. Speaker, on Monday I set out that Mr. Skripal and his daughter were poisoned with a Novichok, a military-grade nerve agent developed by Russia. Based on this capability, combined with their record of conducting state-sponsored assassinations, including against former intelligence officers whom they regard as legitimate targets, the UK government concluded that it was highly likely that Russia was responsible for this reckless and despicable act, and there were only two plausible explanations. Either this was a direct act by the Russian state against our country, or conceivably the Russian government could have lost control of a military-grade nerve agent and allowed it to get into the hands of others. Mr. Speaker, it was right to offer Russia the opportunity to provide an explanation, but their response has demonstrated complete disdain for the gravity of these events. They have provided no credible explanation that could suggest they lost control of their nerve agent. No explanation as to how this agent came to be used in the United Kingdom. No explanation as to why Russia has an undeclared chemical weapons program in contravention of international law. Instead, they have treated the use of a military-grade nerve agent in Europe with sarcasm, contempt, and defiance. So, Mr. Speaker, there is no alternative conclusion other than that the Russian state was culpable for the attempted murder of Mr. Skripal and his daughter, and for threatening the lives of other British citizens in Salisbury, including Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey. This represents an unlawful use of force by the Russian state against the United Kingdom. And as I set out on Monday, it has taken place against the backdrop of a well-established pattern of Russian state aggression across Europe and beyond. It must therefore be met with a full and robust response, beyond the actions we have already taken since the murder of Mr. Litvinenko, and to counter this pattern of Russian aggression elsewhere. As the discussion in this House on Monday made clear, it is essential that we now come together with our allies to defend our security, to stand up for our values, and to send a clear message to those who would seek to undermine them. This morning I chaired a further meeting of the National Security Council, where we agreed immediate actions to dismantle the Russian espionage network in the UK, urgent work to develop new powers to tackle all forms of hostile state activity, and to ensure that those seeking to carry out such activity cannot enter the UK, and additional steps to suspend all planned high-level contacts between the United Kingdom and the Russian Federation. Let me start with the immediate actions. Mr. Speaker, the House will recall that following the murder of Mr. Litvinenko, the UK expelled 4 diplomats. Under the Vienna Convention, the United Kingdom will now expel 23 Russian diplomats who have been identified as undeclared intelligence officers. They have just 1 week to leave. This will be the single biggest expulsion for over 30 years, and it reflects the fact that this is not the first time that the Russian state has acted against our country. Through these expulsions, we will fundamentally degrade Russian intelligence capability in the UK for years to come, and if they seek to rebuild it, we will prevent them from doing so. Second, we will urgently develop proposals for new legislative powers to harden our defences against all forms of hostile state activity. This will include the addition of a targeted power to detain those suspected of hostile state activity at the UK border. This power is currently only permitted in relation to those suspected of terrorism. And I have asked the Home Secretary to consider whether there is a need for new counter-espionage powers to clamp down on the full spectrum of hostile activities of foreign agents in our country. Mr. Speaker, as I set out on Monday, we will also table a government amendment to the sanctions bill to strengthen our powers to impose sanctions in response to the violation of human rights. In doing so, we will play our part in an international effort to punish those responsible for the sorts of abuses suffered by Sergei Magnitsky. And I hope, as with all the measures I am setting out today, that this will command cross-party support. Mr. Speaker, we will also make full use of existing powers to enhance our efforts to monitor and track the intentions of those travelling to the UK who could be engaged in activity that threatens the security of the UK and of our allies. So we will increase checks on private flights, customs and freight. We will freeze Russian state assets wherever we have the evidence that they may be used to threaten the life or property of UK nationals or residents. And led by the National Crime Agency, we will continue to bring all the capabilities of UK law enforcement to bear against serious criminals and corrupt elites. There is no place for these people or their money in our country. Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. While our response must be robust, it must also remain true to our values as a liberal democracy that believes in the rule of law. Many Russians have made this country their home, abide by our laws, and make an important contribution to our country, which we must continue to welcome. But to those who seek to do us harm, my message is simple. You are not welcome here. Mr. Speaker, let me turn to our bilateral relationship. As I said on Monday, we have had a very simple approach to Russia: engage but beware. And I continue to believe it is not in our national interest to break off all dialogue between the United Kingdom and the Russian Federation. But in the aftermath of this appalling act against our country, this relationship cannot be the same. So we will suspend all planned high-level bilateral contacts between the United Kingdom and the Russian Federation. This includes revoking the invitation to Foreign Minister Lavrov to pay a reciprocal visit to the UK, and confirming there will be no attendance by ministers or indeed members of the royal family at this summer's World Cup in Russia. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we will deploy a range of tools from across the full breadth of our national security apparatus in order to counter the threats of hostile state activity. While I have set out some of these measures today, members on all sides will understand that there are some that cannot be shared publicly for reasons of national security. And of course, there are other measures we stand ready to deploy at any time should we face further Russian provocation. Mr. Speaker, none of the actions we take are intended to damage legitimate activity or prevent contacts between our populations. We have no disagreement with the people of Russia, who have been responsible for so many great achievements throughout their history. Many of us looked at a post-Soviet Russia with hope. We wanted a better relationship. And it is tragic that President Putin has chosen to act in this way. But we will not tolerate the threat to life of British people and others on British soil from the Russian government, nor will we tolerate such a flagrant breach of Russia's international obligations. Mr. Speaker, as I set out on Monday, the United Kingdom does not stand alone in confronting Russian aggression. In the last 24 hours, I have spoken to President Trump, Chancellor Merkel, and President Macron. We have agreed to cooperate closely in responding to this barbaric act and to coordinate our efforts to stand up for the rules-based international order which Russia seeks to undermine. I will also speak to other allies and partners in the coming days. And I welcome the strong expressions of support from NATO and from partners across the European Union and beyond. Later today in New York, the UN Security Council will hold open consultations where we will be pushing for a robust international response. We have also notified the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons about Russia's use of this nerve agent, and we are working with the police to enable the OPCW to independently verify our analysis. Mr. Speaker, this was not just an act of attempted murder in Salisbury, nor just an act against the UK. It is an affront to the prohibition on the use of chemical weapons, and it is an affront to the rules-based system on which we and our international partners depend. We will work with our allies and partners to confront such actions wherever they threaten our security at home and abroad, and I commend this statement to the House.
Before I went to that video clip, I said fuck you to some of y'all. I'm sorry. I was a little wound up. Sorry about that. But the sentiment is true. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. My name is Noshü. This Sunday, I will admit, again, this is Love Sharing Sunday. I would admit I don't know everything about Theresa May and her politics. I appreciate what she just did right there. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this nonsense, like, subscribe, share, notify, bell. Hey, if you come across a little young lady named Liza Koshy, I think it is, can you tell her for me, just give her a little message, tell her that I said, bye!